Hey everybody, it's Stephanie with the Learning Project. You guys, I am so excited. I'm going to try to contain myself as well as my voice, but let me tell you, I have Philip on the air with us. He is here live. I have been following his posts. Let me tell you, there's so many people in our community. We see their different social media posts. We see different things that they're doing in the community. And let me tell you, Philip Taylor is doing some amazing, amazing things. And I just had to shine light on this. If you guys are listening to this podcast for the very first time, I want to welcome you to this series talking about Black voices in our community. In the Spokane community specifically, you will see people that don't live in the Spokane community that I feel can really add to this conversation. But my goal is to have as many people on this podcast that are from our city that are talking about solutions and talking about grassroots organizations that they have that are making a difference. And let me tell you, and some people don't even have organizations, they are just out doing things. And so we want to shine light on that. According to the Spokesman Review, almost 40% of African American businesses closed down during COVID, which is a really sad, devastating thing to our community. And it really makes me think, like, what can we do to help bring visibility to our community so that we can build more support and also make sure that resources that are helping individuals are not lost. So without further ado, you guys, welcome, Philip. I'm so glad you're here. I'm telling you, you guys, I am trying to contain my voice. I don't want to be too loud, but let me tell you, he is doing some great things. So Philip, tell me a little bit about what you're doing in the community and a little bit about your organization.
Yeah, well, first of all, good afternoon, and thank you for having me on. I've been watching your success for a while now, and congratulations on your baby as well. I've been following that as well. So, when you ask the question, what am I doing in the community? My answer would be, Stephanie, is whatever the community needs. And right now we've seen a need for really some postvention and prevention surrounding suicide, particularly youth suicide. Yeah. And when I say postvention, I mean, what happens to the survivors after the loss of a loved one, a child, et cetera. And I don't think we do a really good job of that in our community. So I've been doing that as a service for those families that have lost a loved one, particularly because I have some unique insight in that. Obviously, I lost my son, Devin, to suicide.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? I know you're really open about it, but for our listeners that have not heard your story, can you dive into it a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So back in 2017, my son, Devin, he was then 22, wonderful young man, beautiful, artistic, wise beyond his years. He stopped by my house on this fateful day. And as he normally would, he'd come by, we'd sit on the front porch, eat a dozen chocolate chip cookies, and just chop it up about life. What's happening? What are we doing in the future? Et cetera. And on this fateful day in November, I happened to be away from home. My wife and I were at City Council testifying to the Ban the Box initiative. And so we weren't home. So he stopped by, he sent me a text and it said, "Hey, Pops, stop by. I know you're busy. I left a dozen chocolate chip cookies on your porch. Just want to tell you that I loved you." And of course, I was at City Hall. I saw the message. I responded back, "Sorry, son, not at home at City Hall. I love you too." And that would be the last message that we shared with one another. In 24 hours, he would have died by suicide at our old existing home on the South Hill. And when I got that message from my neighbor, she said, "Hey, what's going on at your house? There's several police cars, ambulance, fire trucks outside your house." And of course, as a parent, you instinctively know.
Yeah.
And what did I do? I text my son, no response. What did I do as a parent? I text my son again, all caps, no response. What did I do as a parent? I phoned my son, no response. So I jumped in my car. We were only about 6 minutes away at my new home, drove over there, and instantly, based on my history of working with law enforcement and first responders, I knew something was dire. And of course, when I approached the scene, they immediately told me not to go into the garage. I, as a parent, as a man, tell me what I can and can't do, and kind of fought with these officers. And by the grace of God, I was not allowed inside that area, so I don't have that image
Hmm.
seared into my mind. Uh, but that started me on this journey,
Hmm.
Stephanie, and into, what can we do after the incident to support one another? And then it started me exploring, what can we do as Black men, because we fight
Yes.
this and we resist this based on historical layers
Yeah.
of issues,
Yeah.
to address this. What can I do within my church?
Hmm.
And what role does a church play
Mm-hmm.
in
Mm-hmm.
suicide prevention and removing the stigma of seeking out help? So that's what brought me to where I am today. I'm open and honest about it, because I believe that the way I raised my sons, how I was raised as a Black man
Mm-hmm.
by two Black parents from the South,
Mm-hmm.
forced me to suppress my emotions, and thus my sons suppressed their emotions until they had these negative coping skills, which ultimately resulted in the loss of my son's life.
Wow. Let's put a pin in this. Oh man. Okay. I don't know who needs to hear this. I don't know where you're at, but I'm telling you, I have chills right now just listening to the story, listening to just your honesty. And I appreciate you sharing your story because it takes courage. Many people suffer in silence because they don't want to look weak. They don't want to talk about it, especially as men. There's so many people that have dealt with trauma and they don't know what to do with this. So, when you had said that you had suppressed all of your feelings, one of the things that we talk about in the Black community specifically, I can speak for that community because I am Black, and we talk about, Black people don't commit suicide. We don't do those kind of things. We don't do this. And now we see this huge generation. I even think even just in general, it's been a thing, but now we are actually calling it out what it is, that people are just suffering in silence. So how did you get to the point where you were able to confront those feelings, emotions, and be more aware of what you're feeling and being able to communicate that and deal with it? I don't even know what the words would be for that, but how did you even begin on that journey?
Yeah, so I'll have to go back all the way till when I was 17 years old. I entered the service at 17
Mm-hmm.
with the approval of my parents. They had to, sign a waiver to get me in before I was 18.
Uh-huh.
And that's where I first experienced my first suicide.
Hmm.
I was in basic training, and
Wow.
a young man took his life, hanged himself in our dormitory. And we, as all young men inside despair, didn't know what to do. We obviously contacted our drill instructor. He came, they removed the body, and immediately after the body was removed, Stephanie, he began to berate us about how weak this individual was. Now,
Oh.
this is the social conditioning that we get, right, as
Mm-hmm.
men.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when the drill instructor left, we didn't know we didn't know whether to cry, we didn't know whether to talk about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
We all just went back to sleep. So that's how it started, the socialization of how I was supposed to respond as a male.
Hmm.
And of course, my father built that up, teaching us to always wear the mask when we left the house. And as you know, Stephanie, that mask is
Yep.
never seeing them see you cry, never letting them
Yep.
see them is white America.
Yeah. Yep.
And sadly, what that created in me and many that look like me is this suppression of our emotion. And those manifest themselves in so many different negative coping skills, whether that be anger, whether that be frustration, whether that be, not being that role model that we need for our children. And it created this misconstrued masculinity that's reinforced in the media as well.
Yeah.
And so sadly, I will admit that my children, I have 3 children, 2 existing, never saw me cry until I lost my 22-year-old son, Devin. And
Wow.
that is a result of how I was raised and conditioned. And it was at that point, at 50 years old, I told myself, this is nonsense.
Yep.
I have to stop. And so I reached out, I sought out, different ways of addressing this. And I found a group online called Black Trauma. And it's a nationwide group of young Black men, young and old Black men that get together every Friday. It's every other Friday, and just talk about and explore those issues that we were conditioned to believe that we have to break down. And I will tell you, Stephanie, you had professional men, you had former basketball players, NFL players, head coaches that would be in these groups on Zoom during the pandemic, letting out their emotions. Former gang members. It was
Oh.
it was cathartic, and that taught me or showed me that I needed to go deeper and to find out how I did that. I connected with a brother by the name of BJ Williams, who has a podcast called Can I Be Vulnerable? And a brother by the name of Hamza Abdullah, former NFL player, and they're both Washington State Cougars. And we started saying, how do we get this message out? How do we change this narrative that is really harming, particularly the Black community? And here's what I'd also offer this. You said the Black community, and I love that because oftentimes what we hear is BIPOC, this acronym that we didn't create,
right?
You know, which is just colloquial slang for Black people,
right?
You know,
right?
So when we want to talk about these issues that are impacting Black men and women, let's just say Black men and women, because our experiences, although traumatic with our Native American brothers and sisters, and
all
others,
different. All different.
Yes. And we are not saying ours is worse than our Native brothers and sisters, but there's nuance and context to those.
Yes.
And if we just group us all into this acronym, it waters down our issues that we're dealing with right now. Like,
I didn't even think about it like that. That's deep. That's deep. Yeah.
And I think it's just linguistically lazy for us to do that. And often it's not us that are doing it, Stephanie. It's our allies that, BIPOC and all this nonsense.
Yeah.
Just say it. If you're talking about Black folk, talk about Black folk. If you want to talk about Native American folk, talk about Native American folk.
Yeah.
Address those core issues. And that's what we're talking about today. And so, that journey exists today with me, with Hamza and BJ, and really just having those candid conversations and turning this narrative of what it is to be a man, if you will, and changing weak from a descriptor to an acronym. Now it is weak, WEAK, willing to express adult kindness. And that's what our children need to see.
Yeah.
That's what our community needs to see.
Yeah.
We don't have to be hard. We don't have to be, stand on the corner. Corner ain't gonna love you back when tragedy happens.
No.
It's gonna be Stephanie and Phil and Mama Beans and others who are modeling this behavior that we really need to see.
Woo! Yeah, if y'all not watching the video, like I am, like this conversation is so deep because we and a couple of other our podcasts, we keep talking about like why does the Black community have so much like they don't work together well here. There's like a lot of brokenness here. When you go somewhere else, Blackness looks very different. And we have a lot of transplant people come here and they are like, what is this? Like, we can't even put our finger on it. We can't even connect with this. But many people have tried to figure out what is the culture here? What can we do to connect? What can we do to really understand one another and support one another? And I honestly have to say, this is a big part of that conversation. And when you're talking about being open, being transparent, being willing to show yourself where you're at, all of those different things and being able to support one another, I really feel like this is where your business comes in. So tell us a little bit about your business and what you guys are all about.
Yeah. So, my wife and I have a communication business called Demand Results Consulting. And within that consulting business, we do a plethora of things. One of the things we do is leadership communications strategies. And we believe that communication is at the core of connecting, as you spoke with, right?
Yeah.
We do diversity communication, a training within there because Spokane is unique, like you said. It's multicultural. We got a lot of brothers and sisters that come here from the military that are transplanted here, myself included. Yep. But we also do the comfort training and suicidal awareness training. And we think it's important because, it's like a handshake, Stephanie. Mm-hmm. When you're communicating with someone openly and vulnerably and listening actively and empathetically, it's like that handshake. And the handshake can only be broken when one of the two parties lets go. But if I'm engaged in that handshake with Stephanie, and I've asked Stephanie, "How you doing, my sister?" And you're like, "No, I'm good, Phil. No, I'm not feeling that. I'm not going to let you withdraw until I say no. I need to know how you're really feeling. I want to affirm your experience. I want to listen and assess, the harm, the hurt that might be going on, and then help you, maybe even guide you by hand to some resources that are out there. And I don't think we do a good enough job of that in our community.
Absolutely.
By connecting and resourcing with one another.
Absolutely. And again, I want to go back to the mission, the vision of this whole podcast series is to bring that visibility to the Black community, and to build more connections and that basically bring these things to light, because there's so many grassroots projects closing down left and right, and people are like, I didn't even know that this was available. I wish that I would have known about this. And so I want to talk about one of your posts that I saw, which was talking about suicide. So I had seen you like going to people's houses, helping people that their children. Literally, we've been talking a lot about this in our community. There's a lot of kids, young people that are committing suicide, feeling hopeless, and you have been literally jumping in like, let me help you, let me get this, let me do this. Can you tell me a little bit about what you're seeing and experiencing and how you are partnering with the community on this, or just individuals?
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. At church this past Sunday, because I think the churches have a role to play in this, and specifically Black churches, right?
Yeah.
I was talking with my brother Hamza, and he's Muslim, and even the mosque have a role to play, right? The imam.
Yes.
They need to talk about this hurt and this harm and these things that go on silently, that they're not willing to address in these spaces, and to understand that they may not be equipped from their pulpit to do it. There might be others, and you described it as grassroots. I would describe it as grass tops, because we have been planted, but we have come up like you are on this podcast
I love it.
We have transformed, right, from that root to something more beautiful, and that is helping our community. So what I have been doing, Stephanie, is whenever a tragedy occurs in our community surrounding suicide, particularly a loss of a child or a loved one, I have been offering myself as someone who can lend a active and empathetic ear that understands what they have gone through. I'm not there to offer advice. That is the last thing folks want in those situations. I am there to offer comfort, to listen, and to tell them they are not alone in this hurt, to remind them that the reason why they are hurting, Stephanie, is not because of the guilt behind the loss. It's because hurt resides in love, right? Your grief rests in love, and that's why it's hurting so bad.
Yeah.
But you can work through that grief because it's not this linear process, right?
Yeah.
I tools to work around that. I'm not a counselor. I'm not a therapist. I don't have a master's in education like yourself. What I have is a PhD. And that is a passion to have dialogue.
Boom. Say that one more time. Say that one more time. What does PhD stand for?
A passion to have dialogue. And with whomever needs that. Sometimes this dialogue looks like what we're doing right now. Sometimes it is sitting and simply listening and offering a brief, I understand, offering a brief prayer. At church this past Sunday, I offered a prayer to those. And within that prayer, we're talking about vulnerability.
Yeah.
I stood up at the pulpit and cried through that prayer. And there was a time in my life I would never do that in front of people.
Yeah.
Never do that in front of people.
Yeah.
But we have to get beyond this nonsense of somehow crying is a weakness. Somehow showing your emotion is a sign of weakness. I tell people this all the time. I'm 54 years old, 5'7", 180 pounds. I can bench press 400. I can deadlift 550 and squat 500. But I wasn't strong enough to stop myself from taking his life.
Wow.
Because I thought strength meant that. Instead of opening up and being vulnerable and listening to what he had to say, asking him what he needs to help him through his pain. That's real strength. That's real strength right there.
Man, listen, y'all, this is some good stuff right now that we're talking about. I am loving the fact that we're breaking down what it really means to be strong, what it really means to be supportive. We've been talking a lot about peer support specialists. You guys, if you are a business owner, nonprofit, this is a huge area that's growing and it's starting to be recognized. Exactly what Philip is talking about, that is exactly what this is. Peer support specialists, being able to go and talk and be with somebody and just be. It's the same thing that we talk a lot about on our doula podcast. We talk about doulas being that support specialist, even though that birth is happening between the mother and the father or whatever that dynamic looks like. That individual is there to help each party get through this traumatic situation and be ready for whatever happens.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
that is exactly what you're describing to me, when you're talking about when you're seeing certain things and you're coming in. And a lot of times people just don't even know what to say. They don't even know
Absolutely.
what to do because they're like, this person just lost somebody that's really close to them. They love them. I don't know what to say. I'm
Yeah.
not sure what to say. Like, what can we, well, there's two-part questions here. First question I'm going to ask you is, what does a person need to do when they experience something like this with another person? And the other question that I have for you is, what can we do before that individual gets to that point of suicide? Like, when you think about your own personal story, if you're like, dang, if I would have just, and I know you can't go back and just do a bunch of what ifs,
Right,
but
right.
is there anything that you can be more, like, people can be more aware of,
Yeah,
or resources that they can connect to, if they see a loved one going through this?
absolutely. So I'll go back to your first question. Here's what we know, and you know this, especially from an educational standpoint. Empathy is one of the oldest skill sets, traits, emotions in human beings,
Hmm.
but it's also one of the least utilized emotions. So when you
Ooh.
ask, what can we do? And we're often afraid to do or say the wrong thing. I would say
Mm-hmm.
this to our listeners, Stephanie: doing nothing is worse than making a misstep.
Mm.
And I'm going to say that again. Doing nothing is worse than making a misstep. Because
That's good.
in that time when people are feeling isolated, alone, angry, ashamed, upset, guilty, whatever it
Yeah.
is, by you just leaving them alone in that,
Hmm.
it deepens that chasm.
Wow.
Even if you make a mistake, because this is how comfort works, right? Someone has a tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
We in our totally connected society, what we do is we hit a sad face on Facebook,
Hmm.
or a thumbs up, or whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
We might send a card or flowers in the first week. Then the memorial comes. We might go there and cry and give them a hug.
Mm-hmm.
Then the
Mm-hmm.
memorial ends a week later, and the cards stop.
Hmm.
The calls stop.
Hmm.
We go back to our busy lives. But you know where the hurt remains? With that
Where?
family that's lost.
Mm.
So do something.
Hmm.
Do something that you're good at.
Yeah.
Stephanie's good at these podcasts and communicating. Maybe it is, hey, when you are ready to talk, Phil,
Yeah.
let's have this conversation so no one else has to suffer in silence. Maybe you're good
Mm.
at writing poetry or cards, send something their way. Maybe
Yeah.
you do good cooking, drop
Yeah.
something off on their porch.
Yeah.
Doing something is better than doing nothing. That's what I would
Wow.
say is the first question. Question number 2, what can we do? Trust our gut.
Hmm.
Trust our gut, first and
Yeah.
foremost. You know who your loved ones are. You
Mm-hmm.
know how they are.
Yeah.
When something hits you wrong, and as a parent, for me, when it hit my gut, I should have known. I
Hmm.
should have reacted,
Hmm.
yet I didn't. So trust your gut. And what I'd also say is, not all suicides by our young adults are tied to major clinically diagnosed depression. But there's
Hmm.
a myriad of things that go on. It could be depression. It
Yeah.
could be just acting out. Could be drugs or alcohol. Could be
Yeah.
relating, etc. But what we see is the behaviors manifesting a change in them. And here's what
Mm.
we don't need to do as parents. Oftentimes, fathers, we want to throw
Mm-hmm.
our cape on and
Mm-hmm.
save the world, fix it,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? Sometimes mothers who are truly empathetic want to, talk about how it's good to experience these emotions, and you should be here because there's a good reason for you to remain.
Yeah.
What we need to be doing is not trying to fix it,
Hmm.
but sitting in that emotion, whatever it is, anger, hurt, upset, sit in that, affirm their experience. Don't
Yeah.
minimize it. Don't minimize it. And then don't do this. Well, that's just adolescent mood swings.
Hmm.
Oh, that's just Stephanie being lady. She won't get
Oh
up out
my
of bed.
goodness.
You see what I'm saying? And we do this.
Yes.
I'm admitting it.
Yes.
I'm admitting this. My own
Hmm.
fault. Trust your gut. Today is September 13th, in the middle of Suicide Prevention Month. What better time to have a conversation about how your loved one is feeling and what they need to get through than today? This conversation has buttressed me to say, there are people out there like Stephanie that are willing to remove the Band-Aid from this wound that is our trauma.
Yeah.
Trauma is
Yeah.
a wound. And if I don't remove that wound and get some air to it and get some healing to it, it's going to continue to get worse. And this is a wound we can't. If my arm's in a sling, Stephanie, you know my arm needs medical attention.
Yep.
But what about what's inside me that you can't see?
Come on.
The only way we're going to discover that is to embrace the power of vulnerability.
Wow.
Conversation. Listen.
You guys, I don't know who needs to hear this. You know, we are talking about creating these support systems and having them remain, having them be planted, rooted, not just, you know, starting something and then stopping something, or people not supporting it, or people don't even know about it. What you're talking about, Philip, is so crucial right now, because so many of us are going through different issues. We're experiencing so many things in our world right now that is just taking people to a whole nother level, a whole new edge. People are ignoring their mental health. They're ignoring their children's mental health. And it gets easy to do, especially when we do it for ourselves. You know, we say, oh, you know, I'm fine, you know, especially when you've been taught that what happens in the house stays in the house. What, you know, if you are dealing with, you know, certain things, don't be a baby. You need to, you know, especially this was the one for me that was really hard, which was you don't believe in God. You need to have faith. You need to push through. You need to push through. You know, you were using these phrases that are literally isolating an individual and keeping them from freedom of their mind, their body, their soul, their spirit. And they can't even move forward because they're still stuck in that place, but they won't admit it. They won't talk about it. And they feel like they are alone. And that is where community comes into play. Many of the individuals in our community, I feel like, have businesses, have families, have all different things. And we are looking for support systems and looking for connection. And we don't know how to make this happen. You know, this is a way that we can connect and understand who's in our community and who can we go to if we need something. You know, Philip, what are some resources that you could tell our listeners today about, like, listen, if you see this, get into this. This is a resource. This is where you could stop this toxic behavior of just ignoring it or pushing it to the side.
Yeah, wow. You know, you said a lot there and hit a lot on the head. But before I give those resources, I know we're running up against our time. Steph, I think it's important to talk about the church, because, you know, I grew up in a time where, you know, it's just that crazy uncle. Oh, that's just your aunt. You know, so-and-so need to pray more.
Right.
You know, but sometimes, you know, it's beyond the pulpit. It's professional. And our pastors, our imams, our rabbis, you know, our priests need to understand that sometimes they are not equipped with the skill sets to deal with that. And they should be directing folks to that treatment. There's a brother out of Atlanta, and his last name is Lewis, and he created what they call the Confess Project. And I'd love to bring it here to Spokane. And the Confess Project, if you don't know what it is, please Google it, but I'm going to tell you what it really is. He is bringing mental health practices to the barbershops and beauty salons in Black America. Because who knows more about you? Who are you?
Barbershop and beauty shop.
Stop it up more with than your barber or your beautician.
Yes.
And what he's doing is equipping them with these skill sets, not making them counselors or therapists, but we know we confide in them, giving them enough mental health resources to they can direct men and women to those resources.
That's it.
And so that's one of the things I really want to bring to Spokane, because, you know, Larry was my confidant when I was coming up. Now Jay Trout is my confidant. He's been the confidant for my boys when they was coming up. Prior to my son. So I think that would be a wonderful resource to do that. But our Black church has to keep us from being stuck in that position.
Yeah.
We spoke about it directly. But resource in the community, you know, first of all, get educated on how you can identify these issues that might be going on with our young men and women and children. And there's great resources called Feel Safe for Life that gives free training on how to identify these risk factors related to suicide and mental health. Obviously, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, I sit on their board. They have a great resource for that. And they are advocating for great federal legislation that particularly addresses how it impacts Black communities and communities that have been historically marginalized or have been historically left out of the statistical framing of what mental health looks like. If the demographic they're using to provide these resources are simply all white Americans, that's a different feel than what we are experiencing, right?
Yeah.
And when we have to experience the racial reckoning that's going on in the world, Black murder porn by these images of Black men being shot or killed or assailed over and over and over, even by our allies that are sharing in good intent, but the impact on us creates further mental distress.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can go online to an organization called BEAM. BEAM. It's Black Emotional and Mental Health, and they have a plethora of resources to use, and it's easily laid out in their atmosphere. Then I would say, reach out. If you want to talk, hey, I'm gonna give you my information. My DMs stay open. If you want to call and have a conversation about something, I've done it many times for many families in this community, for many sisters and brothers in this community, and I'm willing to do that. And then connect you with deeper with other resources and how to journey through your grief and those kind of things. So that's what I would say.
Man, let me tell y'all, when you guys heard me clap, you guys already know why I'm clapping, because if you've been listening to my podcast, I have literally been saying there is the song by Lizzo that says in the beginning, she says, "Press shampoo you, get you out of my hair." And I said that is a very crucial part in her song, because it's talking about how Black people receive mental health treatment, which is typically by their beautician and their barber. And it is a communal thing. It goes all the way back to Africa, our roots. The hair, the body is such a communal thing. And getting that piece of connection, counsel is huge. It's important. And I remember talking to my beautician, Stephanie Tellis, who is amazing. New Beginnings is her shop. And I remember as a little girl, I used to just be so obsessed with her. So I used to go to her house when she used to do hair out of her house, and I would just sit there and listen to her and watch her. And she would have people coming in, she would wash their hair and braid their hair, and they would just be pouring out and pouring out. And she goes, "Stephanie, sometimes it would get so exhausting because you hear all these problems, you just want to help everybody." And because she knew all these people, she would connect people together, she would get them resources, and it's so important. It's exactly what you just said. That project is amazing. I really hope that you're able to bring it here, and when you do, please let me know. I would love to shine some light on that. This has been a jam-packed conversation, you guys. For some of you, you're going to have to go back and listen to this over and over. I know I am, but I definitely want you to know that this community has some great gems, and we just need to connect more. We need to be able to share more. We need to be able to be vulnerable. And I think when we're talking about, suicide, and we're talking about support systems, not only just for the individuals that are close to the person that may have committed suicide, but also just the community, people that have known those people that have gone through that. Everybody needs this different kinds of support. And I really feel like, Philip, you have just been on the grind. I mean, just people have been reaching out to you, and you're sharing your experience, you're showing up, you're being there. And I just want to say thank you for doing that for our community. I know there's probably a ton of other people that are doing it out there, but I want to thank you guys also. But I want to thank you because dedicating your time and putting yourself in that situation and being able to be there so that people can just know that people care. And I think that's the one thing right now that we need. There's so much division. Sometimes people just need to know that you care. You're there. You're present. You're not no judgment. No this, no that. I'm here. And so, Philip, where can people find you? Like, if they were like, you know what, I really need this. Like, I need to connect. I need a coach. I need some training. I need maybe somebody to come and just support my family as we go through different things. Like, where can they find you?
Yeah, surely they can find me on Facebook at just my name, Philip Tyler. It's a public profile. You can connect with me. You can shoot me a DM from there. You can find me on Instagram under Colorful Conversations on Instagram. You can find us at Demand Results Consulting, and that's online too. And you can connect with us online, or you can just simply give me a call, and I'll give you my cell phone number right now. It's 509-954-8392, and just shoot me a text.
There it is.
If you want to have a conversation. But before I close up, Stephanie, I have to say this. I can't speak for Black women, although I was raised by a Black woman and three sisters. But we also need to tear down that negative of a strong Black woman.
Yes.
That is a narrative that's been heaped upon you, foisted upon you too, that makes you suppress your emotion and how you feel. And that prevents you from moving on and getting that healing. So what you're doing today is showing that, hey, I am a resilient Black woman, a professional Black woman. I don't always have to be strong. What you need. Sometimes I need to be vulnerable. Sometimes I need you to comfort the comforter. And Black mothers have always been the comforters. So I think that's important to say too before I end this conversation.
Thank you. Oh man, so you guys, so for those that don't know, we're going to be going into a lot of different areas with the Learning Project, and exactly what you talked about, how this is impacting relationships, mental health among Black women. It's a lot. And I know even in my journey, having my little one and just marriage, all these different things, you feel like you have to be so strong for so many different segments. And we're going to be talking more about that. So when we hit that conversation, Philip, I would love for you to come and join in on that, because it's going to be a very communal thing, and being able to have a lot of people come and talk about what's going on and how they're feeling, how they're dealing with it, and just being a support to one another. And I just want to thank you so much for being here. You guys, I hope this fills your soul, your mind, your spirit. You know how I always say, you guys, don't send somebody flowers, don't give them chocolates, send them a podcast, something that can fill their soul, that chicken noodle soup kind of good, gets to their bones, their bodies, and just really rejuvenates them, and that is what these podcast series are all about. And guys, until next time, don't worry if you are driving. All the information will be down below. Follow us on Spotify and all of the other platforms that we're on. And we will see you guys really soon. Thank you so much, Philip. Again, thank you. Until next time, you guys. See ya. Bye.